Had to take a little bit of time away from work, and it's backed me up like crazy, way behind schedule. Good news is, you can see I got my 2-post and my 4-post lifter out of here. It looks like a bomb went off in here other than that.
Shithole! 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 Shithole!
A shithole.
Shithole! 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 Shithole!
Plan is to get this back on the dyno next week finally. But today, I'm gonna be tuning this really nice C10. Still not quite sure why so many of these C10s end up here, but it's cool because I like them a lot. Before I get started on this, this car is getting picked up today. Actually, Honda dirt track car, fuel tech. So I'll move the truck out, move the Honda out, set the truck back up on the dyno, and then another Honda with fuel tech is coming this afternoon. And if the moon and the stars align, I'll be able to finish this up completely today because we got a big block nitrous car coming tomorrow. I never would have thought in a million years it'd be this difficult to get my own junk on the dyno, but now that the lifts are gone, hopefully can get the second dyno set up over here. It's gonna make life a lot easier. This truck actually did start and run and drive here, which is a good sign. The file that was in it had probably 14 degrees, too much timing in, and the learn table had been populated, so it had been driven up there, like it big block timing in it. So hopefully everything's okay in that regard. And the pollen's gonna kill me. So I actually rebuilt the file for it last night at home. I'm gonna load that in it to make sure it'll cold start, and then we'll play musical cars. A little bit interesting about this particular truck, or I guess the owner of the truck, is this is probably like the 20th car I've tuned for him, and I've never actually met him. Everything always gets dropped off and picked up. So one of these days, hopefully I'll get to meet the guy. So the weather's finally starting to warm up, so theoretically, starting this from sitting overnight should be a little bit easier than normal. I don't remember if I went up or down on all of our startup stuff. It looks like I went a good bit down, so hopefully I didn't go too far. I'm gonna go ahead and log this, so that way I can kind of really analyze it. For the time being, we'll just make sure it runs. So I'm gonna try and start it without giving it any throttle. It's actually pretty close. Probably just take a few percent of fuel out. That's a good sign. It's snappy even when it's cold. Oh, I gotta close the hood. Maybe that's a good sign that this will go smooth. This is a really nice build. It's like an LS3 crate motor. Yeah, the only kind of weird thing is that it has some like OEM Ford injectors in it. Sounds good. I really need this to go smooth. All right, let's play musical cars. Idle's gonna need a little bit of tweaking once we put it into gear. It'll probably correct itself once it warms up, but either way, gotta get that right. Now we're gonna pull this thing out. Like I say, this has fuel tech in it, and I keep trying to like fuel tech, but it's not easy so far to like it. There are some things about it that are cool, and some things that I like, but just as a whole, there's a lot of things that I'm not in love with, and I don't know if that would change if I just spent more time with it. I'll shut up and pull this thing out of here. $1 million question is, will the wheels come off without having to take the whole car apart? So far, the wheels won't come out. Just had to get a little bit more creative with the jacks. I think we're back in business. I've gotten so used to setting cars up on the hub dyno that I actually prefer it over, you know, strapping down a car on a roller dyno. But every now and then you get one like this that does not go quite as smooth. I feel like it took every bit of an hour to get this thing on the dyno, so that wasn't ideal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to warm it up and try and iron out our idle a little bit. And I think on this one, I normally do all of the part throttle stuff first, but I think I'm going to do full throttle and then go back and do the light throttle later. Just wasted a bunch of time with injector end angle. This car just doesn't care where you put it. If you go too far positive, it'll start running bad, but too far negative, and or you can go all the way negative rather, and it just doesn't care. Got it idling pretty stable. It's pretty rich on tip in. So I'm going to try and straighten that out real quick, and then we'll start rolling this thing. I don't know how well you can hear it, but got the cell enrichment in line at idle. We might have to tweak it once we start driving. Come back to idle nice. About 1 or 2% closed loop correction, sometimes 0. I'm just gonna roll it part throttle a little bit to make sure it's in the ballpark. Ah, damn, my remote keyboard's over there. Please hold. All right, now that I spent all the time on that, I just remembered they sent me some different injector data for these injectors, and I forgot to actually put it in the software. So just change all the injector data, so we'll see how far off everything is now. It wasn't a drastic change, but it was enough it should make a difference. We're still in the ballpark. Yeah, we're like probably like 5 or 6% off now, and we were at like 1 or 2 before. So not too bad. Let's just roll this thing a little bit. Did my best educated guess on building a fuel map for this thing. Being lazy and using the learn table right now just because I haven't, I said I'm just kind of rolling it to get it in the ballpark. We'll fine tune it with the learn turned off. Start. Let's give it some RPM. But as a starting point, perfectly happy with that. That's not even necessarily enough to worry about trying to do anything with that yet. I'll wait till we make a couple of runs and just make one big wholesale change. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite me. I gotta set the trans to where it won't downshift on us. Actually, I'm gonna pull like 3 degrees out of it. And I'll probably just rev it until it looks like it's too far out in left field. Take a look at the log. Real time it looked like like it was 1 or 2% up until I let out of it at about 6,000, and it was about 3 or 4% there. All right, so here's a quick look at the first log. See our closed loops in check for the bulk of the run. This is where the dyno is just holding it before it releases. Which actually I'm going to... no, that's fine. And once I started to see this 3 or 4% I got out of it. Our injector duty cycle is pretty high. Which looks like it's going to work out just fine for this, but that's not going to give us the opportunity to really play with any injector end angle stuff full throttle, which is kind of a bummer. Some of these ones that are maybe a little bit more simple, try to spend a little bit of time just tinkering and playing with something. Every now and then you learn something new. So I just added a couple percent up top, and really I just need to make a run all the way to give us sort of a baseline so that we can compare against. If I start changing timing and everything else, I don't know what it would have done compared to what it was. So this run, nothing exciting, made like 350 something that time. RPM made 408. Everything looked good, so we're going to make the same run with a couple of degrees of timing put back in it that I took out. Perfect reason why you always start with less timing than you think you need, because it didn't really do anything. And what's even crazier is I took, what was it, 12 or 14 degrees out of it originally. Let's look at the graph. Tell, but these are two runs overlaid with one another. So like at 65 there's a little bit of a difference, but we're gonna go the other way with timing and see where we're at. So I just put 2 in, so I'm gonna take 4 out, which will ultimately be 2 less than where we were the run before. Looking at this timing table, with how low we're going to end up on timing, it looks like halfway makes me wonder if there's somehow like 87 octane in this. Alright, I'll shoot this into the ECU, give this a try. Power everywhere. 404, which seems that where our first run was probably kind of the happiest, even though I thought we were starting with less than what we were going to need. Not the first time I've seen that. Alright, let me check out this log to see if we gotta make any changes to anything. This one, put some timing back in and change the shape of the timing curve a little bit. See if we can kind of get the best of both worlds here. So it did pick up. It sounded like I got into the rev limiter a little bit, so we're going to bump that up a touch. Yellow is with the most timing pulled out, and blue is kind of changing the shape of our timing curve and trying to make kind of what's going to be the best all-around option. I'm pretty content with that. So even though that seems to be making peak power all the way around, we might build a little bit of a safety net into that. I think I'm going to try some different target air-fuel ratios now and see if it wants to make a difference at all, plus a little bit of RPM. I'm going to try a richer air-fuel ratio now. These, I don't know, man, most of these LS things just don't really seem to care about your air-fuel ratio as far as like a power output goes, but every now and then you get surprised. So even though this is probably a waste of time, we'll do it anyway. I forgot to bump up the rev limiter. We'll do that on the next run. Basically no change, kind of as expected. Yeah, those overlay basically identical. Alright, now this one is about as lean as I really feel comfortable going on this. Picked up 2. Don't really care about 2, but we'll see if there's anything more worthwhile other than just the peak number. So I guess it is real. Made no difference for a large majority of the run, but damn it, did make a little bit of a difference up top. Yellow is kind of the baseline. Red is richer, lost a little bit, and blue is leaner. Picked up a couple. So I'm going to lean out everything below that point and probably leave that point there. Bump the rev limiter up, and then maybe we'll just play with the injector end angle a little bit. And this doesn't have tags on it, I can't drive it, so I might make sure that it's going to shift okay. Let me make those changes. And this one, going to try a different injector end angle, so I went a little more negative on this one. I think we have a little bit too much injector duty cycle for this to really matter anyways, but we'll give it a shot. 99 out of 100 times this doesn't really do much of anything. Got excited for a second, it picked up a few horsepower, but it was just a little bit of extra RPM. As far as the end angle, I didn't do anything. Alright, now for the last full throttle run I think we need to make. We're going to try and go more positive on the end angle. .100% overlays the other graph exactly, so just go ahead and Control Z that one. Alright, gonna let this thing cool off for a little bit and mess with this other Honda just showed up. And then we'll make sure that the trans is going to shift, and then we'll, hopefully that'll be the end of it. We'll see. I don't know. second fuel tech car, I just needed some touch up on idle and some tip-in stuff. Both of those cars were actually on the dyno a couple weeks ago, and like long-time guy I know was tuning them, but I don't know if he was busy or what, but there's some, outside of full throttle, there's some stuff that needs some adjusting. The first one I had on the dyno for a little bit, I just don't have the time to do that one, so hopefully have it to where it just kind of idles a little bit better for him. Let's see if we can get this thing to shift. Alright, we're going to run this thing through first, second, and third gear. Let the ECU shift the trans. And log everything, check it out, and hopefully this will be the last run that we need to make on the dyno. I did make one run before this, and it didn't want to shift out of first, so brought down the shift RPM from first to second. Kind of like my best guess at what that's going to do. And hopefully it works this time. Starts up nice, comes back down to idle good. So the trans is just in drive. Good. Also need to bring up the 3/4 shift speed. Alright, let's check this one out. Alright, if we go through this, close looks good leading up to it. Right here, we get this spike, but if you look, it's also right when the dyno releases. This, before I go going crazy with it, we'll touch up and check out on the street. Sometimes it's real, sometimes it's not. So it's shifting out of first at about 6,000. You can see with the yellow line we're targeting a little earlier than that. So I might be able to go up. Might got a little aggressive with what I took out of it. 2.3 is about where I want it, and I already looked. I just completely forgot to change the 3/4, so we're good there. Now if we go back and look at fueling, once we get past that spike, it takes a little bit to come back. That all looks pretty good. I'm not going to chase 1 and 2%. 75, 80% duty cycle. 85, I guess, rather. So I guess I hit the nail on the head with the injectors that they chose. If that's going to do it for me on the dyno, I will probably, this doesn't have tags on it, so I'm a little bit limited on what I can do on the street. So I might just kind of drive it to the parking lot over here. It's got a little bit more room than this one, and make sure everything feels good. And between two of the guys that worked on it and the guy that owns it, I've been dealing with all these guys for a really long time. So if it comes down to it, we can just send some logs back and forth if need be. But this thing's running perfectly fine, so I don't suspect that's gonna be an issue. Okay, let's take a look at the dyno run with the gear shift. Shut down at real early RPM. Listening to those fans all day gets super old. This went probably about as good as a dyno session can go. Didn't have to use any tools. Everything just working right, and that's really makes tuning enjoyable when that's the case. It gives you the opportunity to spend way more time on the stuff that matters rather than, you know, chasing this wire and this leak and that leak. So it goes a long way when you put your stuff together real nice. This C10 is actually extremely nice. and it's actually painted. I don't know how well you can tell, but it's not like, it kind of looks old and janky, but it's not, so that's pretty cool. But everything on it's really well put together, and you know, looks like it belongs. I like kind of both ends of the spectrum. When you get something old like this and you make it all new and Holley dash and everything else, there's an element of that I think is cool, and then there's also an element I think is cool when you leave it where it is. This is my kind of best educated guess on where to start. Obviously didn't rev it out all the way, and red is, after tweaking it, nothing in particular did much of a difference, but all of the little tweaks made a little bit here. So all things considered, it's a decent amount of power. I mean, people would pay good money if you could put that much horsepower in a box and just ship it to them. So even with starting with something that you think should be right, there's almost always little room for improvement on just about every car. So something to take into consideration if you're considering, you know, having your car tuned or spending time on the dyno. The forced induction cars is where that number can really skyrocket, or these NA things can. Like if I would have started with that original file before I put mine in, it probably would have, if it didn't melt down, it probably would have had a really significant difference in power. You could probably hear it knocking from the next street over too. I don't usually like doing the shifting stuff on the dyno. It's nice for kind of troubleshooting, in this case making sure it actually will shift and all that, but I just feel like there's such a drastic difference between the dyno and the actual road when it comes to the trans side of things. I think they're amazing tools for tuning, obviously, but I think, you know, like I say, there's not my favorite thing to do for the trans stuff. I'm gonna try and drive this without getting arrested. The good news is both of the owners of both of those Hondas are cops that work in this area, so if I get locked up, hopefully they can help me out. I'm in love with the brakes on this thing. Stop. No change in idle. Perfect.